In order to survive and thrive, local media needs local support. So join us as a member, patreon.com/dailydetroit, or if a one-time thing is more your speed, buymeacoffee.com/dailydetroit. The whole team appreciates it, and I do too. Thank you. Hello and welcome to your Daily Detroit. Welcome to the week. It is Monday, March 27th, 2023. I am Jer Stays, and joining me on the line is
Fletcher Sharpe.
Good to talk with you, sir. Although we just saw each other a few days ago. We will get to that Detroit City FC game in a minute, but let me tell you, I sat in the car for a good 15 minutes before I moved, just with the heater on.
Yeah, when I got home, my partner can attest to this. She had the fireplace on, and I literally sat in front of the fireplace for like about an hour and a half and just wilted because I could not move. It was so cold, and I thought I'd be wet, but it wasn't even the wet. Just I was so cold from the wind, and it just was such a not awesome day that day.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about a bunch of stories today. Burger King is actually doing a big pullout of the Metro Detroit market with one of their franchisees. Detroit City FC's loss against Indy 11. We've got a lot to talk about with that. The Detroit Lions are looking to make some rules changes. And yeah, so there's a lot, and we'll get started to it. I think the first thing, whatever you think of Burger King as like a fast food thing, because I know there's going to be a lot of people who are like, hey, I don't like fast food, whatever. That's a different discussion than this, I think, a little bit, because so there's these articles talking about this morning that Burger King is pulling out of more than 20 locations. More than a dozen in the city of Detroit are closing, as well as some in the suburbs too. Livonia, Ferndale, places like that are all losing, these restaurants. More than 400 people are going to be laid off, according to a WARN notice filed with the state, which, as always, and I always acknowledge this, losing your job sucks. So I want to acknowledge that before we get into this. But this article mentions that 26 Burger King locations are closing in Metro Detroit. But what they count in Metro Detroit, in this article in Click on Detroit, is Flint. And I want to ask the question, Fletcher, is Flint Metro Detroit?
Nope. I barely consider Ann Arbor Metro Detroit, and that's really just based off the fact that Ann Arbor is like a decently large town. People are like, I'm from Metro Detroit. I live in Ann Arbor, East Flint, and I'm like, I don't know if that's Metro Detroit. That's pretty far away. But no, Flint is not Metro Detroit to me. Not at all. If you're in Genesee County, like you're just outside of Metro Detroit to me. I don't know who they were polling to get the Metro Detroit answers, but no. I mean, there's some cities in Metro Detroit that don't even want to be Metro Detroit, in my opinion. I'm sure if you ask the average Livonia person, are they Metro Detroit, they'd be like, yes.
So says our listeners in Livonia. I'm curious what they will have to say about that, because I know we have quite a few. To me, Livonia is clearly in Metro Detroit. It's not even a debate because it's in Wayne County.
Definitely. Like, it's in Metro Detroit. But if you were like, are you in Metro Detroit? They'd be like, yeah. So, if they want, they can trade with Flint. I'm sure downsizing has its reasons, but you always hate when it affects people. But don't pin the Metro Detroit losses, on us if it's out there in Flint, because that's not our bubble to worry about.
Well, the census and some media market things pull in 10 counties for Metro Detroit. And I've always been kind of sketch about that, because to me, and I know some economic development folks won't like me saying this, I feel like adding to deal with stagnation. So if you just keep adding areas, you're going to keep gaining population, as opposed to if you look at your core and try to look at what's actually happening there. To me, from a functional point of view, it's Oakland, Wayne, Macomb as the core. And then I'll hear an argument about Ann Arbor. I don't think Flint is Metro Detroit. It's really hard when people start spreading ideas like Monroe County is Metro Detroit. I don't buy that. Although, again, the government cuts things a certain way. The economic development people cut certain ways. I just find myself, and I'm told I travel a lot east to west and north. Most people I know, they don't go to 6 counties in a month.
If you've been to Monroe, Michigan, it's not Metro Detroit. Anyone saying Monroe County, they have not been there. If you've been there, you're fully well aware that's not Metro Detroit. And I'm not one to say every single part of one area has to look exactly the same. mean, heck, the city of Detroit looks very different across its entire landscape, but like it's got to be like a similar vibe throughout the entire area. And Monroe County is not the Metro Detroit vibe, and I'm sure people there will even readily admit that.
All right, well, I want to hear from you. Are you in Livonia and you want to strongly claim Metro Detroit? Go ahead, dailydetroit@gmail.com, or if you're somewhere else and you've got your own thoughts on it, again, dailydetroit@gmail.com.
And I've been thinking about it, everything getting so shrouded.
Let's get into that game on Saturday, Fletcher. I want to start by nominating the Weekend Warrior fail of the week, and that is going to be whoever that streaker is, because on both sides, I feel like we can agree that wasn't the best move. Like, if this guy was an Indy fan, this is not a great way to treat your opposing team, and I know you've got feelings if he was a DCFC fan.
People talk about Detroit fans being terrible home fans. That's not great to show up someone else's facility and do that. And if he was a Detroit City fan, he must be a new one who doesn't understand the sport of soccer, because he literally ran out there while the game was like in the middle of play. Detroit had momentum. They were going to put the ball back. Probably weren't going to score, but they were going to try to put some pressure on Indy's defense. And because the guy ran the field when he ran onto the field, they had to stop the ball and then go from a dead ball, which allowed everyone a moment of rest. It allowed Indy to reset themselves. I understand why the person might have done it, just to give people something to like chuckle and laugh at on a very cold and windy day. But like, that was the most inopportune time, save for maybe if the DCFC had a shot on goal and he ran in front and saved it. I'm glad that he got trucked at the end, though.
I was looking for Joey Bell. 10 years ago, he like took out one of the streakers over at Ford Field.
Wayne State
Yeah. You know, if he was in fact a Detroit City fan, know that you were Indy 11's 12th man in that play.
Some would say the 12th man was a head official.
Let's get into that for a minute, because a lot of controversy with the number of cards that were dispensed. Now, to be fair, he was calling cards everywhere, but there's a lot of anger around this one. In fact, even Coach Trevor James in the Detroit News talked about his frustration with the officiating.
Yeah, I'm not one to blame the officials. Everyone knows this. It's happened with Michigan State football, Michigan State basketball, Lions football. I don't like blaming the officials. Yes, that they are in the way, and yes, they can directly influence games at times. But like, it's an hour, at least an hour of sport, depending on the sport you're playing. And in soccer, it's 90 minutes. So yeah, while the official had some moments that Will Cocker had at sideways, Connor Rutz's offside goal, which watching the replay, he appeared to be a little bit closer to onside than off. The numerous yellow cards he gave, second one he gave to Yazid Matthews. Sure, you can say in some instances he had a very rough time, but like, you still have 90 minutes of play to happen, and you still have to play through it. You can't just not play. But on the second Yazid Matthews yellow card, that was definitely a yellow card. The first one, I saw the replay. I saw it live. It looked not great, but seeing a replay, you see the guy kind of embellish some contact. He falls holding his stomach, then grabs his foot. So he just wanted to make sure that Yazid got a card. But if you're on a card and you've already been carded, as we said, on the YouTube clip, you have to understand that and kind of modify the way you play. Having a yellow card and sliding 2 feet up into somebody is a very, for lack of better words, bonehead thing to do. Because you know full well if you make contact with this guy, especially on a team full of people who've already shown that they will dive and go down for contact, you're going to get booked again. And if you're already chasing a goal at that point, you don't need to do that. You make it exponentially harder for yourself to try to come back and get into the game. While the referee might have had a not great game in terms of how he handled things, he made it clear very early, I'm not standing for any foolishness, any late touches, any late contact. If it happens, I will book you. I will tell you and I will book you. So to come in late consistently, to trying to, sneakily use your hand as Reese Williams did, yeah, he's let you know I'm not standing for any of that stuff. You got to adjust. And I mean, part of that falls on the manager as well. It's on the player's temperament, always on the players for that part. But like part of it, falls on the manager to like, hey, think. It's like when Jim Caldwell was in charge of the Lions and they were one of the most penalized teams for a few years. Yeah, that's the player's temperament not being great. But if it continues to happen throughout, a season, the manager's got to step in and say, we got to stop doing this. This has to happen. Play with an edge for sure, happily. When you get called out on it, tone it back a little bit. And it looked like they just didn't.
It seems like that's the theme of the game, though, a lack of adjustment. Maybe there were some adjustments in the starting lineup, but as the game progressed, it didn't feel like the team adjusted. It felt like it was like, this is the way we're going to play. And then we get to 60, 65 minutes in and realizing like, oh, this is not working.
Yeah, unfortunately, they realized that after being down a goal and then down a man, and by then it's too late. Now you're pressing, and now you're having to play out of yourself entirely, hoping that you can maybe squeak a ball into the net. That's not a great way to play. Indy 11 are not El Paso. El Paso makes mistakes. Indy 11 doesn't really make that many mistakes. They play the ball on the ground. They had a game plan coming in, and after their initial game plan did not really work out so well, they switched and started playing a bit differently. You notice when Detroit was playing with the wind in their face, they played a bit more of a bit better of an offensive game than when the wind was at their back, which is typically what you don't expect. Indy 11's offense came alive in the second half. When they realized the wind was just too much, they played the ball on the ground. They played quick passes to get between the defense and just kept pushing up and getting up and getting up. Also, they dove, which I don't like at all.
Indy 11 could almost be called Indy 11 inches because their team's 11 inches from the ground on their back, right? Like, I don't like that stuff.
Yeah, I don't like it, but like they stuck to it. And like, while I'm not going to give them, props for diving, they came with a game plan. And when it didn't work, they adjusted to something that would work, which was playing quick, concise passes, getting the ball up the field, a little bit quicker, and then, selling some contact. Said, you know what? This ref gave a yellow for dissent because Douglas Martinez did not give the ball back. That's a ref who's like, I'm not doing any foolishness. We're not having long conversations about whatever. It's windy, it's cold, we're moving this game forward. If one team can adjust, the other team can definitely adjust. It's one thing, again, using El Paso, if a team's making mistakes like that, you can counterattack them. But if teams don't make mistakes, you have to then create your own chances.
Well, and that's the issue with Detroit City right now. The lack of offense came up. The team was a different team with Skage Simonson on the field. I don't know why he didn't start, but I feel like he is going to be crucial going forward because it was a different team on the field. I think that we're going to have some issues because Yazid Matthews is an important part of the offense. He is not going to be part of that RGV game next week because of that red card, which is not good news. We look at El Paso, I was like, okay, maybe some of the offensive issues are kind of resolved. You look at this and they're just straight back again.
El Paso will give you chances to score in them. They will make mistakes. They'll give you chances to score in them. If no team gives you chances to score in them and you're a counterattacking team, you have to manufacture your own chances. But El Paso gave you 3 or 4 opportunities to score and you capitalized on 3 of them. Indy didn't really give you those chances. They you might have come and taken a chance or taken a shot, but it wasn't because they made an egregious error that like left a gap for you to exploit. And we noticed in the 2 games where a team did not really make those egregious errors, Detroit's offense was anemic. But in the game where like team was like, we're going to get forward, we're going to counter, we're going to do this. Oops, we lost the ball, and now your people are running towards our net. Detroit capitalizes, which is great. But if you have to wait for other teams to give you chances to capitalize on them, you're not going to score many goals. And yes, Yazid is out against Rio Grande Valley. So they're going to really have to hope that Ben Morris's visa issue is cleared up, because if not, they're going to have to be putting someone up top who might not want to be up top in that capacity. Personally, I think Skage's position is as a number 10, just underneath the forward. So when they run 3 at the back, he's typically the guy who's just behind the 2 forwards. I think that's his best position because it allows him to dribble, take more space, see more of the field, and then create for people. But also because he is 6'3", 6'4", people want him up top to use his big frame and heading ability to get the ball towards the net. Honestly, whatever works at this point, just get the ball in the net for the club should be the goal.
So Indy 11 did score every game. There tends to be like a major Detroit City defensive mistake, which is unfortunate because the thing is that the way the team's set up now, you basically have to play perfect defense, and that is frankly an unfair ask.
Oh, it definitely is, and it's why, in my opinion, I think that puts Nate Steinwash as one of the best keepers in the league because his job is infinitely more important than most teams who have playoff aspirations, because at least some of them have offenses, like something to lean on to put goals in the net. He has to have a shutout or has to let up only 1 goal a game. And even 1 goal a game means you might lose that game because you didn't score a goal. And like, yeah, when you're pressing very hard for something, you want something very badly. Occasionally, you kind of press a bit too hard and, you make a mistake. And maybe that's where Detroit City FC's defensive errors are kind of clicking in. Week 1 was the goal off of a wonderful strike from Jackson Kinsanzu. Week 2, I wouldn't say much of a defensive error, but Zacharias got the ball in the box, popped it up to himself, took a great shot. Game 3, this time was a short free kick, which essentially was a corner. From where we were standing, it looked like a corner. I thought it would gone out for a corner kick. Short free kick, played it low on the ground. It'd be one thing if it was played into the air and like you had to try to adjust for like the ball being through the wind, but it was played on the ground and like 3 or 4 DCFC players whiffed. 2 or 3 Indiana players were in position to get the ball to strike it towards net. And because everyone was kind of whiffing and standing around, Nate didn't really have much room to move. So when Brian Ribayan struck it back towards the lower left corner, he couldn't move. That's it. He had to hope someone deflected it out. And unfortunately, no one got a foot on it. And that was kind of all she wrote from that point forward, because they just had to just pass the ball back and forth and, make Detroit frustrated, which they did, because soon after, Yazid picked up that second yellow for a red. Again, it's early in the year. It's not, the end of the world. It's not a death blow to them making the playoffs. Indy 11 are a really good team. At this point, the game's over. You have to just focus on your next one against Rio Grande Valley and then make some notes.
What are your thoughts on RGV? What do we need to do?
RGV will be the first time you play against them. They are a pressing team. They're a team who wants to keep the attacking power as much as they can forward. On corner kicks, typically teams bring up most of their players. RGV leaves their 3 forwards up top. If they get a chance to get the ball out, they want to start a counterattack as quickly as possible. They want to get the ball to their forwards and get the ball up the field as quickly as they can. So if it means having a bit less defensive pressure, then they'll happily do it. If they are marking you defensively in a corner kick with 6 guys as opposed to, 9, sure. It's because if we happen to get the ball out to one of our players, we want to fast break attack you. So you have to be very aware defensively of where their forwards are going to be, because they will swing all around and through, in and out. And you don't want that to be your back line with them taking a shot unencumbered on your net.
Gotcha. Any predictions?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I've seen Rio Grande Valley play a few times. I'm not, an expert on them by any means. They have tied their first 3 games all 1-1 against Las Vegas, Oakland Roots, and Monterey Bay. Pretty good chance they probably are looking to tie this one 1-1 as well. Then again, last time I picked a tie for Detroit City, they ended up winning 3-1, and then I picked them to win, and they lost. So maybe I'll go a 1-1 draw, and then maybe they'll prove me wrong and spite me with a win.
Right. I mean, all Detroit City FC fans hope that you are wrong on this one, because a win would be good at this point in the schedule.
And I've been thinking about it. Everything getting so shrouded.
All right, before I let you go, the Detroit Lions have made 3 proposals for rule changes in the NFL. I'll run them down really quick. They want to expand the coach's challenge system to include personal fouls called on the field. They want to provide clubs more opportunities for a 3rd challenge and expand the replay official's jurisdiction to allow for consultation regarding penalty assessment. So they're big on challenges and second-guessing the ref on this one.
Yeah, I don't like challenges. I really don't. I understand some of the calls need to be properly called on the field, and I understand that, again, referees are human. They make mistakes, regardless of the sport. But I feel like expanding what can be challenged and how that works, all it does is just open up Pandora's box to make these games take so long. So long. You're reaching like baseball lengths at this point if you allow challenges for almost everything in this regard. So I don't like it unless you feel so terribly egregiously wronged. I'm thinking of the Saints and the Rams in the playoffs where one of the players ran into somebody after it was definitely a pass interference, but the refs didn't call it. They just didn't see it that way. Yes, challenge that. That's something. But it's something where it's like, oh, this guy's foot might be out of bounds, but maybe not, in the second quarter for a random catch. Don't challenge that. Just make a better throw next play.
If you've got thoughts on that, dailydetroit@gmail.com. And we are done for today. Thank you so much to some members who have stepped up at patreon.com patreon.com/dailydetroit. I want to thank Christina, Paul, Jason, Chris, Alex, and Adam. All of your support means so much to keep this show on the air. And so I really appreciate it. I know, Fletcher, you do too.
Definitely. We appreciate support from everyone who wants to make sure this show can be as best as possible. It's really heartwarming that people definitely want to keep this show going.
With that, I am Jer Stays. Tomorrow, Robin Runyon will be joining me talking about all things development. And, you know, she's such a huge Tigers fan that we will spend a couple of minutes talking about the Tigers, but mostly Detroit development, because there's been a ton of stories. Thank you so much for listening to Your Daily Detroit. Remember that you are somebody, and we'll see you around town.